Hi everyone. Jamie Rains, aka Jammidodger, is a trans-identifying female YouTuber with well over 1 million subscribers. I think the reason she's so popular is because she comes across as very personable to those who are so immersed in gender codswallop that their ability to think and reason has disappeared entirely. Jamie is the worst trans activist YouTuber I've watched, apart from that nutcase who calls himself Ethel Thurston, aka Essence of Thought, who is clearly a lunatic. I don't think Jamie is a lunatic, just staggeringly dishonest and not very bright. An alternative view might be that Jamie is deliberately malicious and cynically manipulating her adoring fans, but I tend to go by the adage referred to as Hanlon's razor: do not put down to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. The video of Jamie's that I'm reacting to this time is another attack on J.K. Rowling. The very first reaction video I ever did was also showing a very dishonest attack by Jamie and her partner Shaba on J.K. Rowling. Actually, it was 4 videos. It was like a 4-part reaction to their long video, and I'd started watching it in all innocence, didn't know anything about Jamie or Shaba at the time, but I was interested in what they had to say about JK's essay, the one she wrote explaining why she thinks as she does. It didn't take long for me to be really shocked at their audacity and the falsehoods they state about that essay. Here's an example.
What she did was write a whole long essay reinforcing that sex is real, disregarding gender identity, misgendering trans women multiple times.
False. JK refers to only one trans person whom she calls a transsexual woman and about whom she uses the feminine pronoun. To claim that she repeatedly misgenders people is simply untrue. She doesn't even do it once. They also make false claims about Maya Forstata in that video, and I exposed them in my response. Maya herself has challenged them, as have many others, but instead of doing the decent thing and taking the video down because of the falsehoods it contains, Jamie is still promoting it. She promotes it again in this latest video and links to it in the description beneath it. The latest video is even worse. It's over 45 minutes long. I've read the entire transcript through, though I could only stand to watch about 15 minutes of it, and I'm only going to show and react to what Jamie says in the first few minutes, because believe me, that is enough to tell us all we need to know about Jamie's idea of what an argument looks like. Actually, you don't have to believe me. If you're a real masochist, you can go and watch the damn thing yourself and be appalled. What we are promised at the start is a detailed look back over the years of JKR's supposed transphobia.
Because there are still a lot of people who don't believe that JK Rowling is transphobic and still deny that she has said anything anti-trans. So as with other longer video essays that I have done in the past, I wanted to give you the tools to 1, decide for yourself, and 2, have evidence points that you are able to express to people who may not understand.
Oh, that could be very useful because I am one of those who has yet to see evidence of JK's transphobia. And of course, I'd love for Jamie to give me the tools to decide for myself. The problem is that surely if the term transphobia is to mean anything, it must mean at the very least prejudice and at worst hatred of trans-identifying people. But of course the likes of Jamie disagree because they use the word transphobia to mean disagreement with anything the hardcore gender fanatics hold as gospel.
Some of the common messages I get are asking, how do I help the people in my social circle understand that people like JK Rowling are contributing towards transphobia, and that this rhetoric isn't a useful or feminist stance, but primarily a transphobic and discriminatory stance?
Are these people who contact you asking for this information really, really thick, Jamie? Because surely if JK's contribution to transphobia is so obvious to you, they'd be able to see it too, wouldn't they? I'm reminded of this rather excellent video I watched once. Here's a clip. And in which she cunningly hides her transphobia behind sentiments like these. The writings of young trans men reveal a group of notably sensitive and clever people. And again I've been told to just meet some trans people. I have. In addition to a few younger people who are all adorable, I happen to know a self-described transsexual woman who's older than I am and wonderful. Although she's open about her past as a gay man, I've always found it hard to think of her as anything other than a woman, and I believe, and certainly hope, she's completely happy to have transitioned. And I believe the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable for all the reasons I've outlined. Trans people need and deserve protection. Ha! We're not fooled, Joanne. You think that by showing empathy, by using preferred pronouns and not saying anything that could be described as remotely transphobic, you are throwing us off the scent of your very obvious and rampant transphobia. I'm really hoping that Jamie is going to make a proper attempt at an argument to show how anything JK has ever said anywhere leads to prejudice or hate, of trans-identifying people being denied basic human rights or becoming victims of violence.
I think the trajectory and development of Rowling's transphobia is also something that we've seen more generally among anti-trans views and people with anti-trans views over recent years. Rowling is a very prominent example of this. It's where people start off very tentative, testing the waters on their opinions, keeping them mostly private, and then eventually over time this spirals into outright transphobia as their confidence in their views grow and their echo chambers strengthen.
Jamie is locked into the same victim mindset shared by many trans-identifying people and imagining that we're all latent transphobes in the first place. As someone who's been on that same trajectory even before JK, let me explain what actually happens. You start from a position of blissful ignorance and sympathy because you're a nice person and you believe in live and let live as long as no harm is being done. Then you see a couple of red flags and think, oh, this isn't good. It might be a man stealing a place from a sportswoman on a podium. It might be women or girls getting sexually assaulted by a man in what's supposed to be a female space. It might be a man getting a job that should really only have gone to a woman. If you're on social media, you might make one or two calm, tentative posts saying, surely this isn't a good thing, or words to that effect, and you will immediately feel the full force of the gender cult's disapproval, which they will express in the nastiest way possible. As a result, your sympathy has diminished, even evaporate, to be replaced with anger and a determination to fight back and be more vocal publicly. That's what happened to me, and it's what happened to JK. I've said this before. In fact, what their hate has done is make her stronger and more determined to fight back. You can see it in what she says now compared to what she was saying a couple of years ago. My God, she must be having 3 Weetabix for breakfast every single day. You did this, Jamie. You and your nasty fellow anti-feminist bullies.
And there are multiple instances of J.K. Rowling's transphobia being linked to causing harm.
For example?
One is the International LGBT+ Review, saying that the UK faces serious damage from J.K. Rowling and other transphobic rhetoric.
The what review?
J.K. Rowling and anti-trans rhetoric have caused significant damage to the UK, International LGBT+ report warns.
Where does that headline come from, Jamie? We're not told.
An international LGBT+ rights review has warned the UK is facing significant damage because of transphobic hate speech and J.K. Rowling.
Where does that one come from?
It notes anti-trans rhetoric continued to cause serious damage in the UK again this year. A prime example is repeated transphobic attacks by author J.K. Rowling on Twitter and in her writing.
Where does that come from? This is your idea of giving us tools to decide for ourselves, is it? Flashing up headlines and text that you agree with, but which actually give us no information, no evidence of what is being claimed. There are no links to any of the sources Jamie shows in her video. Most of them aren't even named, but I searched for and found the ones I show, and I will link to them below. The snippets we've just seen comes from a 3-year-old article in the very scholarly Pink News. The document referred to is the annual review of the human rights situation of LGBT and I people in Europe and Central Asia 2021, and it's 124 pages long. First, I searched for the phrase that Pink News put in quote marks, significant damage, but that doesn't appear anywhere in the report. So I searched for serious damage, and that takes us to the first page on the UK and the second item on it, which is headed Bias Motivated Speech. Anti-trans rhetoric continued to cause serious damage in the UK again this year. A prime example is repeated transphobic attacks by author J.K. Rowling on Twitter and in her writing. I assure you, it does not specify what serious damage is supposedly being caused in the UK. It does not give a single example of J.K. Rowling's supposed transphobic attacks. As you can see, there is a link under the word Twitter, but it doesn't take us to Twitter. It takes us to an extraordinary piece in a journal called Business Insider. J.K. Rowling went on a Twitter rant about how transgender activism can hurt women, which it does, of course. Her so-called TERF stance is unpopular. Yeah, with gender nutters it is. It's obvious from the framing of this headline that it isn't going to be a neutral, objective piece. J.K. Rowling doesn't rant. She's not like me. She's always calm and measured, and the rant referred to here is this tweet. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. Oh, what a rant, eh? So, thus far, we've had Jamie showing us what Pink News says. Pink News reported what this LGBT review tells us, and it links to a pile of total shite in a business journal, which, by the way, does a lot more of the same, telling us what trans activists are saying about JKR. So far, we've seen no actual transphobia from JK. Back to Jamie.
Another is the Women's Media Centre, who have outright said that J.K. Rowling has undoubtedly hurt the trans community.
What? They've issued a statement? Where is it? Got a link for us, Jamie? No, of course you don't. Not to worry, I found it. It's a ridiculous little article from June 2020, written by a handmaid and published on the Women's Media Centre website. And in this article, she calls a tweet by JK, which, quote, implied only women menstruate, transphobic. And she accuses JK of weaponising the abuse she suffered at the hands of her first husband. It's a disgusting piece. You can read it yourselves. The last paragraph begins, J.K. Rowling has undoubtedly hurt the trans community. Really? How has she done that? Let's hear Jamie read from the article.
Rowling's statement had broader political implications too. Not long after these events, on June 14th, the United Kingdom's Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced plans to withdraw the Gender Recognition Act, which allows trans people to identify as their preferred gender.
So not only does the journalist get this piece of news badly wrong, but Jamie, who must know it's wrong, quotes her without correction. Boris Johnson did not announce plans to withdraw the Gender Recognition Act. The short Times article that The Handmaid links to in support of her claim says no such thing. It says that Boris Johnson's team have ditched plans developed under the previous administration to allow transgender people to change their birth certificates without a medical diagnosis. In other words, they dropped the plans to amend the Gender Recognition Act to allow gender self-ID. There were no plans to repeal the law. The act remains untouched and in place. That is what happened, and Jamie knows it. Now, why is J.K. Rowling getting the credit for what Boris Johnson decided to do? Others had been campaigning ferociously against the amendments from the moment they were proposed in 2017. Is this really a case of post hoc ergo propter hoc? J.K. Rowling raised her head above the parapet, then Boris Johnson kicked the proposals into the long grass, so there must be a connection. It must be JK's fault.
A few days later, Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford effectively shut down a vote on the Equality Act, legislation that would provide consistent and explicit non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people across numerous areas of their lives, and cited Rowling's essay as a defense against the bill.
Okay, I've covered this in a previous video, and it happens to be in one of my videos reacting to Jamie attacking JKR Rowling last time round. Let's look again at how it's JK's fault that a bill that, by the way, was opposed by women across the political spectrum, from conservatives to radical feminists, on the grounds that it would take away women's protections and allow men to access places like women's locker rooms and shelters and compete in women's sports, etc. It wasn't about equality.
Or to say it in the words of J.K. Rowling this past week, where she wrote, "All I'm asking, all I want, is for similar empathy, similar understanding to be extended to the many millions of women whose sole crime is wanting their concerns to be heard without receiving threats or abuse."
The sentence he quotes is the very last sentence in JK's essay, and it's just about women wanting to be heard. That's a feminist thing, not that Jamie or this handmade journalist would understand.
And these are just a couple of examples.
Couple of examples of what? One is an example of a political leader coming to his senses and realising that it isn't politically expedient to want to enshrine ideas that had already caused harm thanks to institutional capture ahead of proposed changes to the law, and which had nothing to do with JKR. The other is a politician quoting her saying something that nobody who cares about women would disagree with, in trying to stop a change in law that nobody who cares about women would agree with.
And what this goes to show is that people with huge platforms, whether they have an intention to cause harm or not to a specific community, the impact of their words can still have a huge and negative effect on large groups of people.
Oh, the irony. No, what it shows is the depths to which you will sink in furtherance of your agenda, Jamie. You have not shown that anything that J.K. Rowling has said or written anywhere has had any negative impact on anyone, apart from hurt feels. I'm still waiting to see this alleged transphobia, because if you're claiming a sentence about women wanting to be heard is transphobia, that's not a good look for you. Jamie then does the guilt by association thing and starts whining about transphobes wearing I Love JKR merchandise, and shows some anonymous person saying, "In case you have any doubts about the ultimate aim of the anti-trans movement, here is Kelly J admitting the goal is to stop all transition." J.K. Rowling wears this person's merchandise and has even offered to pay her legal fees. Oh, by the way, I'm so sorry not to be in Edinburgh for Kelly J's gig this weekend. It looked like a fantastic event. What a great turnout and what great speakers. I'm in post-COVID hell. The fatigue is overwhelming and I'm deaf as a post and it's driving me nuts. Anyway, I don't recall seeing this particular video of Kelly J, but I think it's fair to say that all decent and humane people would want all physically healthy people who suffer mental distress about their sex to get the help they need to come to terms with what they are. Jamie herself has said that if she could have avoided transitioning, she would have.
But I didn't wish to transition, I needed to. It wasn't a wish, it wasn't a choice. It was a massive life-altering thing that I had to do. If I could have avoided doing this, I would have.
It isn't hateful to hope for a day when people no longer feel transition is the only solution for them. It is common sense and humanity.
What I really question is how a cisgender woman has become the listened to voice and the go-to voice for quite a lot of people when it comes to trans issues.
She's not the listened to voice, though she is one of many listened to voices. If she didn't exist, nothing would be different in terms of the wider opposition to gender ideology and our determination to fight it. It was all happening a long time before JK spoke up, and of course we're grateful that she has come out on our side and for the contribution she is making to this fight. One of the greatest things she's done so far, probably. And Jamie must be sick as a parrot that all this happened too late to be included in her crappy video, is this thread she posted on TwitX on 1st of April, in which she gives examples of all the ways men who LARP as women are hurting women, and she's challenging the Scottish police to arrest her under the new hate crime legislation that came into effect that day. And then, when they declared she hadn't broken any law, she announced that if they go after any woman just for calling a man, she would repeat that woman's words so they can charge her too. What a legend. I can't put it any better than James Dreyfus, who said, "In one fell swoop, she has liberated millions of women to stand alone and defend their own hard fought for and won right, to stand firm against this insidious dogma which ultimately translates to women know thy place." Having said all that, JK has not been fighting battles in Parliament, in the courts. She's not writing books and articles on this topic. She's not organising public meetings and putting a mic in front of ordinary women. She's not making videos. All of this has been happening without her. The reason why they focus so much on her is that she is truly famous, the most famous person to have spoken up, and unlike so many other celebrities, she's brave enough not to just fawn and simper.
Even if you ignore that what she relies upon to justify her position are half-truths, dog whistles, subpar scientific findings.
Oh, no, that's not what JKR does. That's you, Jamie. Except that half-truths is too kind. You're just telling a pack of lies. You're not even trying to provide evidence for what you're saying here. What are these subpar scientific findings she supposedly uses to justify her position? When has she ever made a scientific claim? And what even is her position that you take such exception to? The fact that people born male can present as women but can't actually be women. Do you ever come out of your bubble long enough to realise that most people think the same?
And her statements are often shown to ignore the actual truth of situations.
For example, again, we have this unsourced bit of text flash up. It's not showing anything JK has said. It's showing what somebody else is saying that somebody else has said. You know, I'm beginning to change my mind about Jamie. I'm thinking this has to be a deliberate attempt to manipulate people's thinking by bombarding viewers with quotes from other people about JK, but not from JK herself. I found the text. It comes from the website of GLAAD, GLAAD. It's a non-profit organisation focused on LGBTQ advocacy and cultural change. And it's a page devoted to things that JK has said that offends them. Starting at the bottom there with her support for Maya Forstater, though they don't name her. And the latest was her misgendering India Willoughby. In one entry they quote an attack on JK by the Mermaids charity. So, very objective source, right?
Actual evidence, science, facts.
Yeah, just say those words forcefully and a bit of fancy video work and your gullible viewers might be persuaded that they are things you care about.
And what we're seeing now is other people, also unqualified and with no lived experience of being trans themselves, being given televised platforms to debate trans rights when it shouldn't even be a debate in the first place.
What we are seeing now is a very few of the hundreds of people actively fighting back, fighting for the women's rights that your cult is intent on destroying and for the children's safety that your cult is disregarding. Activists, scholars, writers getting very limited exposure on TV. Why would you object to that? If your belief system depends on evidence, science, facts, it will be strong enough to withstand any attempted demolition jobs, right?
J.K. Rowling's anti-trans arguments all seem to boil down to a belief that trans women as a group of people are dangerous and pose a risk to cis women's safety in public spaces, something that there is no evidence for.
Wow. Okay, it so happens that I was working on a short video on this very topic when my attention was diverted onto this video, so I won't say too much here. I'll complete the other video and I'll post the link below when I upload it. All I'll say here is that this is a complete misrepresentation of JK's view. She has never stated or implied that all trans-identifying men pose a risk to women. What she has stated is the truth, which is that they are men, and some men, including some of those claiming a trans identity, have already proven to be a risk to women. Women have been hurt, physically assaulted, sexually assaulted by trans-identifying men. Why don't you care? This brings us to the end of Jamie's intro and the end of my video. In the next 40 minutes, Jamie goes through everything JK has said or done since, I think it's 2017, that Jamie and other cultists call transphobic, but nobody in their right mind could possibly see what she said in the same light. They include things like what Jamie calls mocking gender-neutral language, but what some of us would call reducing a majority of women to our bodily functions out of deference to the feelings of a tiny minority who are trying to pretend they're not women. They include that she vocally supported someone who was called out for sharing anti-trans views. Who could that be? It was Maya Forstater, hero who made legal history by getting gender-critical beliefs protected in law. In this video, unlike the first one, Jamie carefully removes Maya's name, so you'll be forgiven for not realising who Jamie is defaming this time, because, make no mistake, it is defamation. They include the fact that her chosen pen name of Robert Galbraith was shared by some American psychiatrist who had practiced gay conversion therapy decades ago. They even include that she was nice to Caroline Farrow, who is a conservative Catholic. I'm nice to her too, I like her. Some of us are able to be friends with people we disagree with, Jamie, for crying out loud. Anyway, Jamie has produced the same list of items used by the cult in their desperate barrel-scraping attempts to vilify J.K. Rowling because she refuses to bend to their will. Not one thing they can say about her shows what any reasonable person could possibly see as prejudice against trans-identifying people. Jamie's dishonest campaign against her is classic smoke and mirrors and absolutely despicable. That's all.